Year 9, Year 10, Year 11, welcome to some revision on Sonnet 29 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning in preparation for your exam. I'm having technical issues, so please forgive my video here. It's going to go over key symbolism, key ideas. It's not going to be everything that you need, but it is the things that you will comment on if you are looking for a grade 7, a grade 8 and a grade 9. Before you do anything, then you need to understand where Elizabeth Barrett Browning is coming from in terms of her writing. She's a Victorian poet. She has a collection of poems, sonnets from the Portuguese, and they're love poems written to Robert Browning. Now, they were in a long-distance relationship, partly because her family disapproved of them being together. And actually, she was disinherited when they married, but also because she was suffering from a severe illness. The reason it's Sonnets from the Portuguese is because that was his nickname for her because of her skin tone. Now, this is going to help you with the poem. This idea that it's long distance, forbidden, and that she's ill will feed ideas within the poem. I'm going to assume you've got the poem in front of you and you're making notes. So I'm not going to read it out here, but if you need to pause the video here and have a look at the poem, then by all means do so. The first thing, obviously, you need to know is that it's a sonnet. Well, we're told that in any way, so that's not a revelation. It's obviously sonnets traditionally are love poems. They consist of the iambic pentameter. Because it's a traditional form of love poetry, there's an implication there that her feelings are endless and therefore she memorialises them in the poem, a little bit like Shakespeare used to do. Now, the iambic pentameter, because it was mirrored on one's heartbeat, implies that her heart is longing and almost unable to function completely without Robert Browning, especially when we couple it with the punctuation, the caesura. Now, we know, as we've just discussed, that initially their relationship was long distance and that her family tried to forbid her from seeing him. So now we've got a reason why the iambic pentameter might signify a longing for and a desperation for. And then, as I say, I've added, can she function without him? But we want alternative interpretation if we're aiming high. So I've added on, alternatively, does the iambic pentameter emphasise powerful love, her feelings, that regardless of the fact that their relationship is forbidden or it's a long distance, that she will endeavour to be with Robert Browning. So therefore, is there an inevitability about this love that she will overcome the odds to be with him? And is that portrayed in the da-dum, 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 and this really powerful meter that is employed? I think of thee is how we begin the poem. You've got your exclamation and your caesura. Obviously, it provides high emotion and almost a tone of disbelief and desperation. But ask yourself if she's pleading with him. I think of thee, convincing him that she's obsessed with thinking of him and she can't think of anything else but him. The flip side of that is she persuading herself, her family, who are trying to forbid it from being a relationship? I think of thee, and this notion that she can't not. Does she sound breathless, hence this huge pause? And if so, why? Is it linked to the illness? Are her emotions so powerful that when they're coupled with her illness, this love is verging on being too much? Now, the pause could also suggest that she's not only addressing him, because obviously I think of they, but herself and the family. Now, I've argued that the exclamation mark provides a startling tone, and there's an implication that this poem begins with in media res. Now, if you haven't done in media res before, it means in the middle of. We are plunged into the middle of their relationship. We are plunged into the middle of what appears to be a correspondence, as if she's writing him a letter. But because it begins with I think of thee, is she responding to him? Is she responding to something that he's said? Is she responding to herself and her own thoughts, which are very powerful as the poem progresses? And this supports the notion of a forbidden love and a forbidden relationship, that there's this persuasive, desperate element here. I think of thee. Then we get, my thoughts do twine and bud about thee as wild vines about a tree, put out broad leaves and soon there's naught to see, except the straggling green which hides the wood. I'm going to see a lot here, guys. Oh, sorry, you can't really get the quotation there. I'm going to see a lot here about symbolism and vines and trees, so please stay with me. But after the huge pause, the poem descends into a faster pace as Browning's passion seems to take control and take hold of her. And this consists of the above section, which are short clauses. You can see, look at your caesura, look at your punctuation there. Arguably, it mimics the action of the vines which wrap around a tree. If you Google vines around a tree, have a look, because it's our biggest image. There's a suggestion that this is something difficult to stop. Again, link this natural imagery to the iambic pentameter and ask yourself if she is unable to control her affection, her emotions. They're running away. Her thoughts are running away with themselves. It almost sounds like she's not really in control. And then we're going to hit our symbolism now if you're after an A star, and A star star. Now, in this natural image of vines and trees, your basic analysis, if you're not very good at poetry, is that love is natural. Of course it is. But there's a few interpretations here. Some teachers teach and some critics teach that vines and trees rely on each other, which you might want to argue. I'm going to argue the opposite, as you're going to see, so please stay with me. There is a notion of entrapment here. Look at that image, and if you Google it, look at any other image of the vines on the tree. Is she suffocating him? Is she possessive over him? There's also an image of clinging. Again, love is linked to desperation here because the vine clings on to the bark of the tree, which is the section of the tree that keeps it stable and keeps it standing. And she is the thing in this image that clings onto it. He obviously is the tree. Now, more interestingly, though, all vines cause structural damage to trees when they grow on them because they literally glue themselves to the bark and obviously climb up the tree. This increased weight will break branches and cause damage, obviously. As we go further with our analysis, the vines will capture more wind, snow and ice than the tree can naturally support, and therefore some trees will break or topple over. So metaphorically now, there is an undertone of a relationship ruined. Is she killing the relationship by being the destructive vine? And then when we go further, if you look at your Caesura, which segregates as wild vines there, the noun vines is modified by the adjective wild. Wild supports what I already said about something that is out of control and difficult to tame. We have this notion that the vines are not really going to be stopped here from clinging and growing and damaging. If he's the tree, is she damaging him? Is it their relationship that's suffering? Is it suffering because of the distance, or is it suffering because of her? Which is definitely an implication here. We're going to go further. Vines will also hide any hazards or any decay or any disease or anything broken on the tree. So they will hide the structural damage so you can't see it. And over time, the decayed area will obviously become weaker. The idea of covering him suggests that she is perhaps hiding the reality of him, making it difficult to see him as he really is. So ask yourself if she's built him up in her thoughts so much that actually the reality of him is disappointing. Because she's overcome with thoughts and affection, isn't she? And then later in the poem, this is supported by in Sphere, where there's a suggestion that the vines are clinging too hard. And the other interpretation is that the vines are also her thoughts. She's obsessed. She can't stop herself from thinking about him. And actually, as we've said, whilst that is loving, the flip side of that is that it's destructive. If she's the vine, then he's the tree. The tree of life is a symbol of a fresh start, positive energy, good health, a bright future. It is also a symbol of immortality. As a tree grows old, it bears seeds, obviously, and that's how it becomes immortal, because it spreads the seeds. Obviously, trees grow, etc. The symbol of growth and strength. Now, we know she's ill. We know she's clinging on to him. So does she compare the two lovers here? That he's the strong one and she's the weak one? He's the stable one. He's the one that keeps the relationship stable, and she holds on to that. Again, let's go further. We get yet, oh my palm tree. Obviously, yet is your Volta, which is heightened by the use of Caesura, which signals a potential change in tone. We've got the possessive pronoun my, which shows, it does show protection, but it also shows possessiveness, and this idea that she feels he belongs to her. Not totally dissimilar to My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. But if we go symbolically, the palm tree is symbolic of victory, triumph, peace and eternal life. And it is sacred in ancient Egypt, representing immortality, which links us back to the tree of life. You know, is he the one giving life to the relationship? Almost as the poem progresses, Robert Browning transforms from tree to palm tree, and we've got this connotations of victory. So is their relationship succeeding against the odds of illness, against the odds of distance, and against the odds of something forbidden? There's also religious implications of the palm tree is there if you wanted to go down the religious route. Rather instantly renew thy presence as a strong tree should. Adverb instantly shows that she will have him physically as soon as is possible. Now the verb renew, I've got 3 literal meanings which will help you. Literally means resume, so obviously to resume their relationship after being apart perhaps. Give fresh life or strength to, so they perhaps need to freshen their relationship, especially if this is how she feels and how she acts, and this notion of desperation and clinging, or to replace something that is broken or worn out. So renew thy presence is her asking for their love, their affection, and in him to be refreshed, and then she compares him to the strong tree. And it links to the earlier references about the seeds of the tree spreading and growth occurring. And the natural imagery therefore becomes extended metaphor. The adjective strong, though, to describe him seems to juxtapose the adjective wild that described her. Ask yourself if she's defining who they are in the relationship. He's the strong, stable one. She's the wild, ill one. Russell lie bows and set thy trunk all bare. Initial imagery of freeing oneself, that he will be bare of the greenery and the vines, that he will be free of her clinging, because if he's in her presence, she won't need to be desperately clinging to him and the thoughts of him, because he'll be there. But there's also sexual connotations of being naked. Her passion is powerful here. Don't forget that this type of language in those days is a little bit risky as well. So we really do see her passion and her emotion for him. More interestingly though, and again I like to go symbolically, the tree trunk is incredible in its design because it protects the whole tree from the harsh cruelties of the world. On the inside there's the system of circulation and an energetic flow, and the bark and the tree trunk protects that. And this is what she's talking about. So again, does she need his protection? And a tree is renewed from the inside out. So again, we've got that linking to renew, which was an earlier reference. That does she need his strength to renew her as well, to give her some new energy? And let these bands of green rich in sphere thee drop heavily down, burst, shattered everywhere. Is it in fact her he needs to break away from in that image? Does she shackle him? It sounds like there's a bit of insecurity here. Some teachers and critics argue that it's passion and drop heavily down linked to nakedness could be physical and sexual, and the fact that she needs him to be a little bit more forceful, which is absolutely fine. But look at burst and your plosive B sound and shattered, and this notion, as I say, of the language turning a little bit more forceful now, as she, I suppose, longs for his presence, doesn't she? Because in this deep joy to see and hear thee and breathe within thy shadow and new air, I do not think of thee, I am too near thee. Browning insists again that she will not only have thoughts of him, but she'll be near him, and reminds us and herself that she perhaps doesn't need to rely on daydreaming and thoughts, because he is her lover, he is hers. And look at because, which I suppose concludes the poem. So it's the conclusion there that whereas older, more traditional sonnets were about longing and unrequited love, this poem ends with the very reason she writes the poem, that she loves him and he loves her. So that flips your traditional love poetry, your traditional sonnet, which was about unrequited love, on its head. And after the Shazera there, I do not think of thee, pause, I am too near thee, the reader is reminded, you have put hat instead of that, the reader is reminded that she gets to be with him. So the poem finishes in a non-traditional way, but in a positive way. And usually your sonnet will end with a rhyming couplet, and she chooses not to do that. So again, think about her celebrating their relationship there. I hope this has been useful. As I say, it is by no means everything. It is symbolism, really, to hit the higher grades. Please check my YouTube channel for anything else you need, and massive good luck in your English literature exam.